Ministry Forum audience, we are recording live from the beautiful conference grounds of Crieff Hills Retreat Center, our first choice for everything in person hosted by the Center for Lifelong Learning at Knox College. We've been gathered here with our special guest for a day-long retreat about another of her many books, learning and enjoying this picturesque space and place that is the ancestral land of the Hattawandurunk, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee peoples, and the treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit. This place is the Dish with One Spoon Covenant place that sought to ensure peace between Indigenous communities. And being grounded in the land today as we record this podcast is significant. You see, there's a tension that many of us feel but rarely name in our ministry contexts. We believe that the earth is God's good creation. We baptize our children with water. We sing about the beauty of the world God so loved, and yet our rivers are warming. The neighborhoods nearest the refineries are the poorest, and the communities first to lose their water are almost always the ones already bearing the weight of something else. Climate isn't one issue alongside others, it runs through all of them. And for those of us who preach, pastor, and serve as ministry leaders, the question isn't really whether to speak to this. The question is how to do it in a way that's both theologically honest and pastorally useful. My guest today has spent much of her career at that intersection. We've had her on before. She is the Reverend Dr. Grace Kim, and Grace is a professor of theology at Earlham School of Religion in Richmond, Indiana, and the author or editor of 26 books. Did I get that right, Grace? It's 26? Excellent. Most recently, Earthbound, God at the Intersection of Climate and Justice, which is an Englewood Review. The Englewood Review named one of the most important theological books of 2025. She's also the host of her own podcast, the Madang podcast, and carried by
Baptist News Global.
Baptist News Global, yes. And she's an ordained minister in the Presbyterian Church in the USA. We know her as a Knox College alumna who was recently featured on the cover of our Vocations magazine. I knew her as Grace, who was working on her PhD way back when. That was a really long time ago as we wandered the halls of Knox College. And since then, she's come a long way. Her writing has appeared in Time, Sojourners, Christian Century, Good Faith Media, and many, many, many more. She's spoken on MSNBC, PBS, C-SPAN, and BBC Radio. Today, I imagine that we're going to talk a little bit about water, Han, white patriarchy, a God who is a verb, and what it might mean for ministry leaders in Canada and beyond to take seriously the claim that how we treat the earth is how we treat God. And so, Grace, welcome to the Ministry Forum podcast. We're delighted again to have you in our company.
Oh, thank you so much, Reverend Borthwaite, for having me. You have done so many fantastic things as the director of the Ministry Forum. I'm so honored to be back on your podcast. So thank you so much. I might have been the first guest.
You were.
Yeah,
you were.
So
you were pre-podcast. You were like the prequel of what a podcast could be. So way to go. Thanks for, we cut our teeth with you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for inviting me back. It's a joy to speak with you. You do so many fantastic things. So thank you so much for having me back.
Thanks. So let's dive in. You studied at Knox College and the University of Toronto. We've been with you today as we're recording for a retreat on another one of your books. And you spoke a lot of your time in London, Ontario. Then your career took you south to our neighbors and siblings down below from us. But I know that you and your family still have strong ties in Canada. I wonder, what of your Canadian self still shapes how you think theologically? And does some of that show up in your book, Earthbound? I'm just wondering.
Well, that's a fantastic question. I think my Canadian identity comes through in so many ways, in so many of my writing or speaking. I don't know if it came directly to affect the book, the Earthbound, but I know it does in so many ways because I'm a very unusual person in the sense that I immigrated twice in my life. Many people immigrate once, but we left Korea in 1975 and we moved to Canada, and I went straight into kindergarten. Halfway through the year, we came in January. So halfway through the year, and I went all the way up. I never stopped. High school, my undergrad, my MDiv, and PhD, I just never took a break and just finished it. And so I graduated in 2001, and I left for the US 2004. So but I've been formed, and so much of my experiences as a child living in London, Ontario. So I know there are some American listeners and other people around the world. London, Ontario is about 2.5 hours from Toronto. In the 70s and 80s, it was much smaller. Now it's grown a bit, and it was predominantly a white city. So when you get a handful of Korean immigrants there and kids making fun of you, so it comes through. It has affected me as a person, as a theologian, and as a mother. So it may not come directly in the book, but it has my experiences here in Canada has affected me and informed me in so many ways. So I am the theologian that I am because of growing up here in Canada, and then especially my time at Knox. So I think when I was doing PhD, maybe you were doing MDiv because you're a little younger than me. Like I when I think about my MDiv program, I didn't even know what I was studying. I just thought these theological words are beyond me. I just had a goal. I'll just be a minister, or I'm going to study my PhD after. So that was my goal. The classes were difficult. I didn't even know what I was doing. And the class that I was part of, I just felt like everyone was so brilliant. I'm like, what am I doing here? I don't understand what people are talking about, because I don't know how Knox is now, but it was a little close-knit community. A lot of people lived in the dorms or really close by. I lived in an apartment close by. So we saw each other, we ate with each other. So every time outside of class, people were talking theology or theologians. I didn't know what they were talking about. But anyway, I survived that. And then I went into the PhD program. And I'm so grateful for the education at Knox and then at University of St. Michael's College. So yes, in so many ways, all of my experiences in Canada has informed me. All the professors I had at Knox and at St. Michael's and Regis and all the Emmanuel College, they really had a huge impact on the person that I am today. In so many classes, even in my PhD, I didn't know what they were all talking about. I was in a critical theory class. I was like, everybody sounded so intelligent in the class, and I didn't know what they were talking about. But anyway, I'm teaching it now. So I must have learned something.
Yeah, you must have got something out of it all. Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Well, thanks for that. Yeah. Let's talk about the book specifically. And I connected to where we are recording from today. Your chapter on water really moved me. Especially there was a line that said, withholding water, creating a scarcity through greed, and exploiting that scarcity as a source of power over others is antichrist. Now here in Ontario, and I'm very much aware that even a kilometer or two, or a mile perhaps for some of your American fan base, from where we're recording is a very tangible example of a water bottling company that has faced a variety of conflicts over contested water rights. And I'm certain this is true for a whole bunch of places around Canada, and I'm sure in places in the US and other places in the world. But we also think about our Indigenous communities in Canada who are still under boil water advisories in a country that has the most fresh water in the world. So how do you want readers to see this connection? You make a connection between baptism and water justice. Can you sort of expand upon that before they dive into the book?
Yeah, so most definitely I wanted to write about water in the book. I was working with the editor at Orbis Books, and he suggested tie it to baptism. And that wasn't even my plan. But people who have read the book said that part with the water justice and baptism was like so powerful. So the editor had some insight for him to tell me to include that, because once you submit a book, you're just kind of done with it. But then you get these editors that tell you to do this and add that, and it happens with every book. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was done, and it's like another huge project. So I'm so happy that you mentioned it. The example that you gave with the Indigenous people, that's also connected, I co-wrote Intersectional Theology with Susan Shaw, and in that book, we're talking about oppressions and how oppressions intersect to continue to oppress. So when we're thinking about Indigenous people, or in the US, the Native Americans, and in other places like Australia, the Aboriginal peoples, what the white settlers did in US, Canada, and Australia, and how they treated the First Nations people, the Native Americans, the Indigenous, the Aboriginals, is racism. So there was so much mistreatment. We took the land. Um, I don't know the stats in Canada, but in the US, so many were. It was a genocide. And those, so they would say 90 to 98% were slaughtered. The percentage, they were just killed intentionally and also through disease. So many were murdered and killed, and in different parts of the world, what we do to Indigenous people. So this is the intersectionality, how we treat people, and then the mistreatment in other ways of this water injustice, that they will get the dirty water or the polluted water. And that happens in different communities in the US too. They'll give the cleaner water to rich areas. Montecito will get clean water, but the indigenous areas, or where people of color reside, so we had the case with Flint, Michigan, that they will get the polluted or the dirty water. So right there, you get the intersectionality of people of color, racism, and water injustice, climate injustice. And so even in the eco-theology, we talk about environmental racism, how we treat people of color, and also how we treat the water or the land that many people of color live on, whether they are the indigenous people or Black people, because they live in the poor areas. So recognizing the intersectionality is key in understanding this climate injustice issue, which I'm really like pushing for in the book in Earthbound, because some people will still say, even with all the evidence, the scientific evidence, that this is not climate change. It's a hoax. You guys are just talking about nonsense. But scientists have already told us for decades that it is our problem, it's human beings causing this, and we got to change our ways of living.
Mm.
So how we treat water and the the commodification of water is a problem. So I link it to baptism. We use water in different ways in the church, and one of the big ways is through baptism. Most denominations, except for Quakers and a few other non-sacramental denominations, we all baptize, whether it's full immersion or sprinkling, like what we do in the Presbyterian Church, like we just sprinkle water, or however we do the baptism, we use water. And the water we consider it holy. So during the time of baptism, we believe it's holy because this act is holy. We are baptizing the new believer, or we're baptizing the baby. Whomever we're baptized, we baptize in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. So majority of the denominations, that's how we do the baptism. And we feel that, our sins have been cleansed and we are welcomed into the body of Christ. It's a very important sacrament within the Protestant church, and of course within the Catholic Church. Protestants, most of us have two sacraments, the Holy Communion and the Holy Baptism. So when we're using water, this free gift from God, and we've commodified it, we've poisoned the water, it makes us rethink, how are we going to think about water? How are we going to have more clean water for everyone? Because this planet Earth wasn't created just for rich people or just for Americans, It was created for all people. And all people, we talk about human rights, etc. And, we have Hillary Clinton, women's right is human rights. everyone having access to clean water is a right. We need water to survive. And in baptism, we need water to have baptism. I did one baptism at a church where whoever was preparing for the day forgot to put water in there.
Hmm.
So you can't do it. So I quickly asked someone to go get the water because we can't do the baptism. We can't just pretend there's water and just do it. It's not, that's not possible. We need the living water because it symbolizes life for us. And there's other images of water, the Samaritan woman at the well, so many images of water and the living water that Christ gives us. So, I'm saying too long of an answer to your question, but this water justice is part of this climate justice work, and it's crucial that we tackle it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. Wow. The You often try to expose folks who read your books to Korean words or Korean terms, and a couple of them you use in the book, different places, and I may be pronouncing them wrong, so please pronounce them in the way they should be pronounced. But you speak of Han.
It perfect pronunciation.
Thank you so much. Which is, as I understand it, means unjust suffering, and then chong,
Chong.
chong, which is sticky love.
Uh-huh.
And you talk about these as kind of theological gifts that are missed in the as the English language Christianity might speak of it. That these kind of terms cover things that we don't really talk about in Christian theology from an English language perspective. So can you tell our audience just a little bit more about these two words, what they might offer ministry leaders as they try to navigate and unpack things like our vocabulary around sin and love, and how they can do that in maybe a different way?
Yeah. So great question because I love to talk about Korea and Korean language and Korean terms. So thank you so much for that question. So I'll talk about Han first. Han, as you said, it's this unjust suffering, um, or the piercing of the heart. So you're experiencing um, a lot of pain and suffering because of unjust systems that exist. So it really symbolizes how Koreans have survived the last, people trace their history like 7,000. We don't know the exact history. But, we've been around for a long time. We're a tiny little country, we're a peninsula, and we've been invaded most of our history. So, right beside us is China, so they invaded us, and the other side is Japan, they invaded us, but other countries invaded us too. So we were targets. And so when there are systems of colonialism or empire that cause a lot of suffering, Koreans call that Han. And it can be experienced individually or as a collective, as a community, or as a country. So we Koreans talk about this collective Han that we experience as a country because we've been colonized by other countries around us. So why is that term so important in theology? Well, in theology, we talk about sin. Thou shalt not commit any sin, etc., etc. And so we talk about confessing our sins to God. And as Christians, especially in the West, we have like this vertical relationship with God. So as long as I confess my sins to God, I know God will forgive me, so everything's all good. So that is how Christianity has lasted all this time. It's this vertical relationship that I have with God. This personal piety was very important in many of these denominations. So that was an emphasis. 1960s liberation theology arose, and most of it was Latin American liberation theology. So, Latin American liberation theology said, you know what, it's not so much this vertical relationship. We got to focus on the horizontal relationship. The personal piety is important, but that's not the full thing. We have to think about the horizontal relationship. Am I sinning against my neighbor? So Latin American liberation theologians said, because they were talking about poverty and how we need to take care of our brothers and sisters. They talked about base community and the option for the poor. So they use these languages to talk about the injustice that we're committing against our brothers and sisters. And that was a very big change from the 2,000-year history of white European theology of this personal piety, me and God, and everything is okay. So Latin American liberation kind of paved the way. And with the liberation theology, then we had feminist theology emerge, post-colonial, we had womanist, Black, African theology. All these different theologies, liberation theologies arose, and also Asian American theology. So when Asian American theology came into the scene, we had theologians like Andrew Sung Park and Chong Lee, who brought in the Korean notion of Han to say, hey, here's our term that focuses on the sin that we commit against our brothers and sisters. So we talked about it as the other side of sin, that we are creating all this harm against our brothers and sisters because of these unjust systems of racism and socioeconomic status. And now we have the climate change. So this harm became a very, very powerful way for us theologians to talk about the context and what needs to be done. As an eco-theologian, so before I did I've been doing eco-theology for a while, but many of the Korean American theologians talk about Han, especially when it comes to racism and sexism. But I may be one of the first that kind of brought it into eco-theology, because when Koreans talk about Han, it's human beings. But I thought, God created all of us, and it's not just human beings that are suffering or are experiencing this Han. It is the earth that's experiencing the Han, this unjust suffering, because the earth can't fight back with all the poison that we're, throwing into the soil, into the water, and into the air. So that's where this climate change is happening. And when scientists are talking about the storms are getting worse and the droughts are getting harsher, the climate, the temperature is going way too high and way too low. So this is the earth crying out. So when people experience harm, we talk about us crying out, and we're crying out to God or whomever, because Koreans recently became Christians if you look at the whole history, but we're crying out because we want to be lifted from this harm. And so when we bring it into the eco-theological discourse, we're bringing it into this and saying, hey, the earth is crying out and we have to listen. So that is Han. The chong is, in Christianity, we talk about three types of love: agape, eros, and philia. Yeah. So the Greek words. So we use these different words to talk about love, because love is a huge dimension. We can't understand the fullness of God, of love between human beings, and we can't understand the fullness of God's love. So, so that's a Greek word, but other languages have different words for love to help us to get a deeper understanding. So as a Korean, I just thought, why don't we bring in the Korean term, which is chong. So chong is this understanding of like a sticky love. So you put your hand in a jar of honey and it becomes sticky. You can't get rid of it. It's a love between people, and we can't get rid of this. Like, people may fight. So just say you and I fight. That's not the end of our relationship, because this chong keeps us together. So no matter what, we have arguments or we have bad days with each other, or the relationship can go 2 steps backward, the chong keeps us together. So that's a very common understanding in Korean society. We have chong for each other. And we sometimes tease, you don't have enough chong, and so you need more chong. So it's a very common language, but I'm just bringing it into the theological language as well as other Korean American theologians. We bring it in to give this other dimension of this connectedness of love. So we don't get that in the English language of love. We don't get a deep sense of connectedness and belongingness, which is part of chong. That's why once you're connected, you can't break the relationship. So in Korea, you can see your kindergarten teacher and you still see them as your teacher because of this connectedness, and we belonged together a long time ago, and you're still connected with me. So today when we ended the retreat, I said, we will see each other again. I kind of meant that because you don't just end a relationship because a retreat is over. It's an ongoing thing. So that becomes important. It's a relational love. And when I think about, the passage of nothing can separate us from the love of God, I think about chong. Chong, so you may want to run away from me, but the chong will kind of bring us together and we'll be connected. So I actually taught this to an African American minister. I told them about chong and the importance of chong. And one time we were arguing about something, and I can't remember what we were arguing about, but it was a heated argument. And then he just suddenly said the word chong. And I just had to laugh because I thought, I taught him this word. I didn't think he'll remember the word. But once he said it, we just stopped arguing. I can't remember what we were arguing about, but it was like, yes, that's not even that important. It was frivolous. And it is chong, this love that keeps us together. And that's important when we're talking about climate change.
Yeah, and when I think about the impact of climate crisis and conversations around the environment and things like that, we often find that part of it is this very individualistic, selfish perspective that has impacted the earth in so many ways. And so when you're sharing this other perspective, it does add that communal dimension, that interconnectedness, intersectional connections as well, that I think is part of what maybe we've lost through, whether it's a capitalist society or commodification of things, all those kinds of things. So yeah, really fascinating how that deepens our understanding.
I hope people who read the book will get a deeper understanding. I can only say a little bit
Yeah,
because I also want people to read the book. And
absolutely.
there's Q&A after each chapter where the publisher really wants it to be used in the church setting, or faith community setting, or some book study group. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So
That's
I'll
awesome.
dig into that.
Yeah. Many of our listeners are ministry leaders from across Canada. They could be clergy or lay people. They're in various sized churches or in different kinds of ministries in cities and small towns, rural communities. Lots of people minister in very different contexts these days that we try to reach out to. If you had one invitation for them in coming out of reading the book, what could you offer as something that you think they would be encouraged to do, maybe to preach or to pray, or maybe to stop doing as they come away from reading the book and engage it in some way? What would you offer for them? Just a few different examples of what they could do.
From reading the book?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, there's a
yeah.
lot of things. So I grew up in Canada. I'm in the US. PCUSA, many churches are trying to create a creation care committee, a creation care group where they do book studies like this, and they're also very active in the city where they live, writing letters and calling the political leaders to act on certain bills. So, the church is beyond the walls. There's so much work to be done. So I'm hoping that more and more, only not all PCUSA churches have it, but more and more are creating these creation care climate committees. and other denominations are doing the same. So in Canada, I'm hoping that whether it be the Presbyterian Church, the Anglican Church, that they will form more of these committees and take it seriously, because the young people are actually very concerned about the earth and this climate change. I know, well, this concern is not age specific, older people are concerned, but the real young ones are concerned because they're inheriting the planet that we're leaving behind. So to get young people who are active already doing it and get them into our churches to participate in this climate justice work, there's so many ways to do it, and the book has some ideas. So I'm hoping that church ministers and leaders will incorporate it into their curriculum, into their school, into the church calendar. So, we have Earth Day, which is April 22nd. And then many denominations, because we're doing this as an ecumenical effort, and I've been part of this effort to implement the season of creation. So that will be, I think, September 1st to October 4th, where we have a whole season to celebrate that God is the creator, and we are to take care of creation. So the Catholic Church, under Pope Francis, really pushed for it, but it's not just the Catholics. Many denominations are pushing for it. I was in Assisi with an ecumenical group where we're really pushing for it through the World Council of Churches and other organizations, that, hey, if we implement this, and we have the 4 Sundays in the fall to implement it in our liturgies, in our prayers, our hymns, and into our book study. There's so many books. Earthbound's not the only book. There's so many other books that we can take the time to celebrate that God is the creator, and this is God's creation, and we need to celebrate and take care of it. So there's so many ways for ministry leaders in Canada to think about how we can live more sustainably.
Yeah, and I remember in congregational ministry, I followed the lectionary for quite some time, the Revised Common Lectionary, and there wasn't often that way of connecting to things like a theme like creation. And at some point, Luther Seminary, which we encourage people to check out a lot of their resources over at Faith and Lead, they had a narrative lectionary that they came out with. And in the narrative lectionary, when I started using that in congregational ministry, every September, they'd start in the narrative. So the first part of the narrative is creation, and there'd be several weeks where you'd really dig deep into that. And that was a neat way of really going a little deeper and trying to find other themes and other things you could do in your church community to really enliven that for people, whether through other kinds of stories or children's books or things like that. It was really quite powerful.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now,
is that Luther College in the States, or the
yeah,
one?
Luther College in Minneapolis, St.
Minneapolis.
Paul. Yeah.
They do. I think they do also the working preacher.
Yeah, the working preacher.
Yeah,
That's
so
where it comes
they
out of.
asked me to do one Sunday on the Sky Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. They've got all sorts of resources. We often point to them. Yeah, it's really good. Yeah. So you're always working on something else. I'm assuming book 27 is coming out any minute now, or next week, or within a month or two. But you're also doing all sorts of other things. I'm just wondering, what's the project? What's the theme? What's the questions that are tugging at you right now? That we might anticipate in the weeks, months, and a year ahead. I'm sure it's not years with you. I'm sensing
it'll be next year. So book 27 is called Inner Light. We already have the title.
Okay.
And I co-wrote it with a colleague of mine at Earlham, Steve Angel, and it's on like the social dimensions and the Holy Spirit. So it is on the spirit, and we cover war and peace, economic justice, gender justice, and climate justice in that book. So we're kind of excited on that.
Awesome.
Book 28 is on Christian nationalism.
Okay.
So that'll come out later next year. So I'm excited about both of those books, because both are at now, the editing kind of stage. So The Christian nationalism, especially under Trump, it's like students are asking questions now and people are concerned. It came up in today's retreat. People asked me during break time. And so, this Christian nationalism is a big problem
Mm.
in the US, but also I think it's creeping up here. So I'm excited for both books. So
Mhm.
invite me back anytime to
Of
talk about
course.
those books.
Yeah.
And you're one book behind because after this was Feminist
Of
Theologies.
course.
Yeah, so you
Yeah.
gotta get me on Feminist
Of course.
Theologies.
It's, I mean, it's nonstop with you, Grace. It's amazing.
Come
I know
on.
it's so hard. It's hard. I'm running as fast as I can. I'm running as fast as I can. Now, today's retreat, you mentioned it a couple times. Today's retreat was on this theme of hope.
Uh-huh.
And when we dive into things like climate crisis and things like that, people often express a sense of hopelessness. For yourself, what's giving you hope these days?
So hope is the call to action. So even though we see this big crisis in front of us, behind us, and we're in it, because it's a call to action, we can't just kind of retreat and feel hopeless. It's a call to action to do something. And each of us have gifts. So whether it be speaking or writing or singing or activism, there's so many ways to fight this climate injustice that's happening. We know our gift. So whatever gift you have, you utilize it to fight it. And I'm praying that more and more people will find hope because hope always leads to social justice. And this climate injustice is one of the biggest social justice concerns of our time. One of the biggest, and it's global.
Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm, for sure. Thanks for that. Yeah, appreciate that. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you were wishing I had
Oh no,
today?
you are such a good host. So you asked all the right questions. So
Thank you.
thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
inviting me and asking these questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And thanks so much for joining us today, Grace. We really appreciate you coming out to this retreat at Crieff. Great place to be. If we know you're coming back, we're going to mention that. If people are interested in Earthbound, God at the Intersection of Climate and Justice, it is published by Ecology and Justice Series. It's also a series that includes the late Pope Francis as well, that series, right?
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, amazing. We'll have the links to the book. The show notes will have also Grace's website. And did you want to give a plug for your podcast?
Yeah,
What
so
kind of stuff's
you
happening
mentioned
there?
so you mentioned Madang. So I can barely do one a month. So it's been a one a month, which is a big strain on my life. But it's usually some well-known author.
Okay.
So I've had great guests on the book, and we discuss the book and the impact the book will have. So I'm always thrilled. So we have great new guests lined up. And it was hosted by the Christian Century, and now it's hosted by Baptist News Global,
Hmm.
which is fantastic. I've written for them, so I'm really excited to work with them. So you can go to Baptist News Global website, or you can just Google Madang Podcast and you'll find it. It's on all podcast platforms, but I also have it on my YouTube channel and my Facebook. Now it's on Reels. It was videos. I don't know. Facebook keeps changing, so it always confuses me. So you can check them out. So Madang spelled Madang, and it's a Korean term too.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
There was a lot of buzz in the retreat today about your connectivity with homebrewed Christianity. And you're going to be at Theology
Beer
Beer
camp.
Camp coming up. When's that happening? Is that in June or
No,
July?
it's in October.
Oh,
I know.
way in
Yeah,
October.
I
Okay.
know. But Trip is like way ahead of his time, and
Okay.
because he's doing early bird tickets.
Mm.
So there are the early bird, and maybe the early bird ended now because that's how he started. And then there'll be still discounted tickets and then full price later on. But it's in October. I believe it's the second weekend of October. Um, or it's actually, no, it's not. I don't know, but I think it's a week after I do the retreat here,
Oh,
which makes
okay.
it September. But that doesn't make sense because he usually has it in October.
We'll
You have to
figure it
just
out.
Google it
Yeah,
because
figure it
I'm
out.
not.
It'll be in the show notes. We'll
Yeah,
figure it
I
out.
thought it was the weekend after this, but it
Yeah.
would not be
No, it's all good.
because I'm in here August.
Hmm.
But it's in Kansas City this year,
Okay.
so it'd be exciting. He already has a great lineup. He
Yeah.
always has a great lineup. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a really diverse. If you've never experienced a homebrew Christianity, you are a regular guest with Tripp. You obviously are good friends, and he does seem to have you for almost every book you do. So,
Well, he's a little behind, so
okay, you better talk to him soon.
in
Yeah,
this case, he's a little behind.
for sure, for sure. So, as Grace has said, she will be back across the border in August. She's going to be leading another retreat here at Crieff Hills in Ontario, based on Earthbound. If today's conversation stirred something within you about water or Han or what it means to live as though Earth is really God's body, that retreat is a chance to sit with that and all the community that will be gathered in this beautiful place, and not only to hear from Grace, but also to experience the land and some practices I think you're going to get people to do as well. So we'll also put the registration details in the show notes when we can. And remember that you're not alone as you minister. And until next time, take care of yourself, take care of one another, and take care of this fragile and beautiful common home that we all have called Earth. Thanks so much.